Hi guys, my name is Daniel and welcome back to this 3ds Max introduction series, lesson 4. Today we are going to be looking at lighting in Corona Renderer. Let's go. Okay, so we have this, we have the villa scene over here. First thing we're going to do is we are going to go to top view and we are going to create a camera. But first, before we do that, we are just going to set our renderer to Corona over here, and we are going to go to, well, we just have to wait for this to update so it doesn't slow us down, and we are going to go to camera over here and we are going to create Corona cam, and we're just going to click and drag a camera from this point of view. Next thing what we are going to do is going to press C to have a look through that camera. And we are just going to pan up and we are going to find a nice angle. So I'm thinking a little bit closer in, a little bit to the right. Yeah, I think that's looking pretty good. So we're just going to check our settings over here. So we have a focal length of 20 millimeters. And we are going to set our safe frames so we see what we are going to be rendering. Okay, so this is our point of view. That's all looking good. Next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to create just a basic Corona material that we can apply to everything in the scene, so we can just test our lighting on a white kind of material. So we're going to come to Corona physical material, we're going to click OK, and we are just going to set this to somewhere around 100 to start with. Next thing we are going to do is we are just going to switch our cameras off, so I don't select that. So what you can do, you can either select everything, which I am going to do now, and apply that material to everything, just like that. Now everything has that material, but if you want to do a test render and you already have materials on your building, what you can do is you can enable material override, and you can click and drag your gray material inside of this slot, and that will create an override material for all of the materials in your scene. And then when you finish testing your lighting, you can just switch it off and the materials that you've applied previously will still be on your building. Also, you can, by clicking on objects excluded, say for instance you wanted to make a render with this kind of gray white clay, but you still wanted to see the glass, you can click on objects excluded. You can look for your glass, select your glass, add it into this box over here, click OK, and that will essentially leave that material without being affected by the override material. But for the moment we are going to leave it like this. And just one thing I'm actually going to select, I'm going to create a basic glass material. So we are going to go again to Corona physical material, and for this instance we are just going to use a preset. So we just click on glass, select that, and I have my glass already up here, so I'm just going to select that, apply the glass to it, and to the second one also. Over here, if you're wondering what this is essentially just selection sets. So you can click on a couple of random things in your scene, and you can create a selection set over here by just saying random, and then you deselect, and you can come here and it's going to have this random over here. You select it and it selects all those things that you had previously selected. Okay, so our base is all set up, and now we are actually going to start creating our first lighting setup for this. So today we're going to be creating two different types of lighting scenarios. One is with an HDRI, which is a high dynamic range image, and the other one will be using the Corona sun. So to start off with, what we need to do is we are going to go to rendering environment. Next, we are going to come down to here and we are just going to click over here and we are going to go down to Corona and we're going to select Corona bitmap. We're going to click OK. And then we're going to click and drag it into our material editors. So we have an instance of it. So anything that we edit inside of this material, or which is going to be an HDRI, will affect the environment. So we are going to go and have a look at our HDRI now. So we're going to go to library, HDRI over here, and we are going to use this 1735 HDRI. I'm going to click open, click OK. Now you can see the background has already changed, and what we are going to do is we are going to do our first test render. So to do that, we are just going to click Start Interactive, and we're just going to wait for it to update. Okay, so we're starting to see some light in our scene, and it's actually not looking too bad. Now what we are going to do is we are going to adjust it so it looks a little bit better than it looks at the moment. So how can you adjust this map? Because at the moment we can see that it's a little bit overblown. So the way you can adjust it is you can come down to here and you can enable color map, and you can just drag this down, wait for it to update. And you can see now we're starting to get a little bit of color in the scene. So I think that we need to drag it a little bit further down, somewhere around here. And now we're starting to see some details in the sky. So what we can do now is we can rotate this map, and because an HDRI, if you're not sure what an HDRI is essentially a photo of a sky and a sun. Usually it has a sun in it, and it's a photo that's been taken, for example, 12 times at different exposures. Then that is combined and it creates one image that has all of that information inside. And we use those types of images to light our scenes in 3D. So if we rotate it, if you just go up to the top here and we click rotation and we say 50, for example. Now we can see that the sun's coming from the left-hand side towards the right-hand side. So we can see that the highlights are a little bit overblown. So I think we're going to need to reduce the exposure a little bit. So we're going to go over here to tone mapping. And I'm just going to add, for example, highlight compression. We're going to drop the exposure to say minus, I think that's too much. So let's go to -1, and I'm going to up our compression to about 4. Yeah, that's not looking too bad. Gonna add this up a little bit. Let's try back to 0. Yeah, I think that's looking pretty good. And now what we can do is we can rotate it a bit more and see what looks good. 75. And when you're creating these types of images, you're going to have to play around with the rotation of the HDRI and see what kind of shadows you get, which parts of the buildings are illuminated. It's essentially a trial and error thing. So we're just going to play around here, and we're going to see what we can find. If we can find a little gem. This is actually also pretty cool, where you see the shadows on the building. It's very interesting. I think just for fun we could add this, just add a basic water material on top of this. So we're going to go to Corona Physical Material and just use a preset for the moment. And we're going to have a look if there is a water preset. Yes, there is. And we're just going to apply that over there, just so we can see some kind of reflections on that. Yeah, it's looking pretty good. And I just want to rotate it a bit more to see what else we can get. But you guys see how simple it is to get a good result from this. And I'm just going to apply this also. And that adds a little bit of glow to the scene. And I'm going to rotate this environment. I think that's too dark, so let's try 300. So as you can see, you can get some pretty cool results using HDRI images. Just to show you what an HDRI image actually looks like. That's what an HDRI actually looks like. If we type HDRI Sky, and go to images. So for example, these are different HDRI skies. So for example, we are using something similar to this. The one thing that you need to note is that when you're rotating it, the sun is always going to be at the same height. So you can't really move the sun higher or lower. So this is one of the constraints that you have when you're using an HDRI. But when you'll be doing Archviz professionally, you'll have a lot of these HDRIs with the sun at different levels. But that's just something that you need to know. That's the difference between using a HDRI and a Corona sun or a V-Ray sun. The V-Ray sun you can move around and put it into exactly the location that you need it at, whereas this is a fixed location that can only be moved left or right, and sometimes slightly up or down, but then the horizon also moves up, so you don't really want to do that. Okay, so this is essentially it for HDRIs, and now we are going to reset this scene and we are going to set it up with a Corona sun. Okay, so here we have the scene reset and prepared for the Corona sun. So we are going to go just to top view, and we are going to come over here and to lights, Corona and Corona sun. All you have to do is click and drag and move it up. I'm going to find a nice position for the sun somewhere around there, and we are going to have a look at what that gives us. So we are going to start the interactive rendering. and this is what we get. So first impression isn't very good, but we are going to fix that by going to the modify panel, and we are going to add a Corona Sky environment, and that instantly adds an environment into our render environment tab. That's already looking pretty close to the HDRI environment that we set up just before, and we can do the same thing and copy this into our material editor so we can edit it from here. And over here you can edit your intensity, so it could be, for example, 0.5. But I think that 1 was actually looking just fine. And then what you could do is you can actually move your sun to find an interesting location like before. So you can move it to the side. And it's looking pretty similar to the HDRI. It's a bit more flexible because you can move it up and down, but you don't get clouds and things like that. But later on you can replace the sky. Another thing that you should know is that when you move the sun down, the color of the sky will also change. So you can create dusk shots and have something like that, for example. To add to that, you can also create some corona lights, for example. So inside of our building, if we go to top view by pressing T, inside of our building we can just zoom in, G to remove the grid, and we can create a disk light. So the settings over here by shape, you can choose if you want to create a sphere light. So for example, something like this. If we move that here and a little bit up, you'll see this will be a sphere light. Well, I'm going to actually move it into the garden. So well, over here you can see like that, and you can change that to a disk light. So this is what we usually use as spotlights in a room. You can instance that, and then you can have 2 of them. So that is sphere light and disk light, and you could also, for example, create a rectangle light. And let's say, for example, we wanted to have a strip light illuminating this area over here. This is how you would do it. And for example, just to finish this, you can also add lights into the pool. So we're going to just go and copy this one and move it to here, copy, move it down. It's illuminating quite a lot. And we will rotate it. As you can see, it's black over here because we are seeing the back side of the light. So we're going to move it 90. This is rotating in increments of 5 degrees because I have the angle snap toggle enabled. So we're going to change that back to disk, reduce the size, something A little bit smaller. Something like that. And we can copy that a couple of times. Okay. We'll wait for the thing to render. If you just want to select lights, you can come over here and you can choose lights, and that will allow you to select only the lights in your scene. So it won't select, for example, this gray geometry. And I'm just going to move this a little bit down so that it can have some bounce light on the bottom of the pool. Go back to all. But as you can see, this is the general idea of how you would light something. In future tutorials, I'm going to be going through whole scenes of how you light each room, how you specifically light a pool and areas. But this, for people that are just getting started in Max, I think is just a good example to see. Okay, all right, guys. So if that helped you, please subscribe, and I'll see you in the next lesson, which will be the same lesson but V-Ray. Cheers, bye.